Derek Chauvin, the Minneapolis police officer on trial for murdering George Floyd, he was found guilty of all 3 charges yesterday. A Fox News panel reacted to that verdict, with Greg Gutfeld explaining why he is personally relieved with the outcome.
And now I'm going to just get really selfish. I'm glad that he was found guilty on all charges.
Yeah.
Even if he might not be guilty of all charges.
Oh my God.
I am glad that he is guilty of all charges, because I want a verdict that keeps this country from going up in flames.
Oh my goodness.
No.
What do you mean?
Look, Greg, listen.
What do you mean? No, I'm at least being honest. My neighborhood was looted. I don't ever want to go through that again.
We do not sacrifice individuals for the sake
I'm saying
of
he's
how
guilty.
people
I'm
feel.
saying I'm glad about the verdict.
Editor-in-chief at The Real News and host of Working People podcast, Max Alvarez, and co-host of the Realignment podcast, Marshall Kosloff, join us to discuss. Marshall, let me start with you. I actually think Greg Gutfeld probably resonated with a lot of people around the country, to be honest, because where there is sort of universal disgust at that video, there's more of a split as to what happened afterwards over the course of the summer and of the rest of the year. What's your take on that?
Yeah, 2 things. So one, I wish Greg had reversed the order of what he was saying, because he thinks Chauvin's guilty. I think he wasn't trying. It really came out like he was saying, "Oh, this person's a sacrifice." He thinks he's guilty, and because he's guilty, like that part of it works. But yeah, I think the thing that's so hard here is that we're seeing situations which are supposed to be about the justice system obviously mean a lot more than just the actual crimes that were being put up yesterday. So it's just really tough to think about these situations, and it's just tough when people see everything through the lens of politics on those bigger points.
Max, it's really something when Judge Janine is the adult in the room.
Well, like Marshall, I mean, yes, you're right. But yeah, like Marshall was saying, I think it is, important to kind of start from the beginnings. Like, I get why people are pissed at this, but I also get what Greg was trying to say. He was saying that he personally was happy that this verdict happened so that, he wouldn't see the social unrest that makes him uncomfortable. What I think a lot of people, especially on the Fox News side, are mad at is that he said the quiet part out loud, right? He basically kind of admitted, right? Then rather than some sort of commitment to a notion of like a universal and timeless notion of justice, he would rather have justice be defined as that which maintains his comfort and protects his property, right? And that's the American criminal justice system in a nutshell, right? I mean, Judge Janine is over here kind of grandstanding, saying that we do not sacrifice individuals for the sake of how other people feel. Janine, we do that every single day, right? Every day we sacrifice flesh and blood, human beings with families and futures that are ripped away from them because someone felt threatened by them, right? We call the police on Black and brown kids because someone saw them in their neighborhood and felt like they did not belong there, right? We over-police and criminalize poor and working class communities so that people in the suburbs, people in their McMansions, people in their penthouses can feel more comfortable. That is how the system works, right? I mean, but you're not supposed to kind of say that as bluntly as Greg did in this segment.
Marshall, the last year for a lot of people felt tumultuous, and it induced, I think, a lot of cultural anxiety on the right and in the center. And I wonder what you think. It's early to process the legacy of the verdict, but we're almost a year removed from the virality of the murder and the video of the murder. How do you think the interaction, what is the interplay between the cultural tumult that preceded or came after the viral video? How do you think that interplays with the legacy of the very real issue here, that there are obviously problems to be dealt with, but there was what freaked a lot of people out, I guess, on a cultural level over the course of the last year. How do those two variables interact with each other towards coming to solutions?
Yeah, so there have been incidents, and this is what Max is talking about. There have been incidents, deaths, honestly, murders too, like this over the past several years that have never resonated to this level. And it's because the metaphor was just too apt. Like, this was a person who was literally, I'll quote Eric Weinstein. He had a tweet about this yesterday. Who was literally had the power of the state pushing down on his neck. So that is why this resonated so much for people. And this is the part which I think people on the right need to get better at least understanding, because I think the thing that Max is saying that's very powerful is at a certain point, like, who cares about whether or not Greg Gutfeld feels comfortable? Who cares whether or not people feel like things are going quite the right way for them when there are obviously incidents like this? The part that people on the left really need to understand too, and this goes to your point about cultural anxiety, Emily, is that there is this perception that if the verdict did not go a direction that a part of the country wanted, there would be looting, there would be rioting, there would be actual chaos, as there was in Minnesota and other places around the country during the summer. And there just wouldn't be consequences for that. There wouldn't be reckonings from that. This is why you see people, the mayor of Portland, last summer saying, oh, Antifa isn't real. There's no big deal here. Then as soon as Trump loses, Antifa is now real, and they're cracking down. So I think the right just sees a situation where they just don't think there is a ball and strikes part of this dynamic. So what we need to do a better job of is not only think this is the right decision, which I think it was in terms of the guilt, but also balance the sense that there is fairness, that justice isn't just about the verdicts. It's also about the idea that, hey, there's a system of justice here. Rioting is never okay. Looting is never okay.
Yeah. On the other hand, Max, first of all, I love the way Gutfeld puts himself at the center of the story. Like, what really matters here is that I'm good to go. Like, he's the victim in the story. But also,
he never wants to go through that again, Crystal. Right.
That was terrible for Greg when George Floyd was murdered, and it affected his neighborhood in a way that he didn't like. But I also think, look, Fox News, as much as they decried the riots last summer, they loved the riots last summer because it was great for their ratings. I mean, they replayed even long after any violence had stopped. They would use video from a month ago and continue to recycle it month after month after month, because they got a lot of juice out of it. And so in the build-up to this verdict, they did a lot of fear-mongering about, oh my God, it's going to be chaos in the streets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That was the focus of a lot of the primetime coverage last night. So in a sort of perverse way, in the same way that, CNN would cheer for Trump to do bad things so that they could use it for ratings, they're kind of doing the same thing here on the other side.
I think that's a really, really great point, that the longer people sit with it, I think the easier it is to kind of see how all this stuff is connected, right? Because, in a way, and I guess like one thing that I would point to, right, is two of our actual reporters at The Real News, brilliant reporters, Stephen Janis and Taya Graham, they talk about this a lot on their show, The Police Accountability Report, including the report they did yesterday on the Chauvin trial, where they said they look at the political economy of policing, right? They show how and where the system of policing and over-policing and police brutality and the media coverage that we get from that, the breathless media coverage, there's a lot of money to be had in that. And it's cynical and sad to say that, but the quicker you start to see things in America that way, the sooner everything is going to start to make more sense. And I think that what you say, Crystal, about kind of Fox really bears that out, right? Because think of when we were growing up, right? It was the other side, right? There was a lot of money to be had in pushing the propaganda narrative that black and brown people are kind of inherently dangerous, right? That shows like Cops, didn't get big followings for nothing, right? I mean, it fed into kind of this cultural fear of the barbarians at the gates, and it fed into this cultural justification for the poverty and exploitation of large swaths of people by convincing those who were watching Fox News that those people had done something wrong, that those people were dangerous, and you should be afraid of them. Now we're kind of, like you said, taking a similar version of that narrative and adjusting it, retrofitting it to the situation that we have today, where the mob, the masses, Black Lives Matter, the cancel culture, wars, whatever. Like there are new ways that the culture industry is trying to kind of find the same villains, but in a different setting. And I think that really the base thing that we have to recognize is that you should always be wary of people who are telling you what to be afraid of when those people can make money off of your fear, right? No matter who it is, whether it's Fox News, whether it's politicians or whatever, always be wary of that. And you should have a cynical lens when you think about that, because they very much do.
That is very well said. All right, gentlemen, thoughtful comments all around. Stick with us. More with Team Rising after this.